Hey, Life Circles team, happy Friday. Thank you for another incredible week of hard work and perseverance during this time of uncertainty and the COVID 19 crisis. I have a few updates. So, first and foremost, we have been tracking a lot of information and reading a lot of reports, and we've decided to keep the day centers closed until Friday, May 1st. Even though our governor's stay home, stay safe order has not been officially extended, this decision was made because we need to keep our participants safe. So obviously, if there are some miraculous improvements before the 1st, we'll be able to open sooner. But based on everything we're reading and hearing, that seems very unlikely. So what does that mean for all of us? Well, as you know, PACE is a model that relies heavily on the ability for the interdisciplinary team and staff members to make quick and creative and flexible decisions based on assessed needs. And we are expecting our participant care needs to increase the longer they're quarantined. As you know, the longer they're socially isolated, the more likely they're going to experience cognitive declines, mental health challenges, muscle deconditioning, behaviors, and just other types of care needs that we're going to have to be on top of. So really, there's not going to be any shortage of work. This means we're going to need our full workforce to be able to respond accordingly. And so we have decided to continue to pay everyone for their normally scheduled hours through the 1st. This is a decision that we made because we believe that we're all going to have a lot of work to do, and so it's the right thing to do. The same rules will continue to apply. You need to participate in meetings and be available remotely. You need to be able to be deployed to the community when needed. There may also come a time when we're asked to work outside of our normal hours, including weekends. We just don't know what's going to happen, and like I said before, we have to be able to respond quickly with all hands on deck if and when needed. Please speak to your supervisor if you have specific questions about your individual situation. Here's a quick update on something non-COVID-19 related. There are still things that we're doing that aren't related to COVID-19 that need to be done. And one of those things is the preparation for our next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. So we have to have our budget prepared and approved by our board, usually before the end of May, but as long as it's before the end of June, that's our goal. The biggest factor in next year's budget is understandably our census. Because of this COVID-19 crisis, our enrollments are probably going to be pretty low for the next few months or as long as this lasts. And so that's going to obviously impact our revenue. So I'm just asking all of you to just be very mindful of expenses. We need to keep a lid on our expenses as much as possible. Once the crisis is over, we will ramp up marketing and enrollment efforts and get this turned around. But in the meantime, just recognize that as our census drops, we need to make sure our expenses are being looked at very carefully and managed well. So locally, I think what I'd like to let everyone know about is just all of the work that our hospitals are trying to do to prepare for this surge of COVID-19 cases. In Grand Rapids, Pine Rest sought emergency approval from the state on Tuesday to add 40 psychiatric beds on its 68th Street campus. This is basically to free up the medical acute care beds in order to accommodate psychiatric patients there instead of in the hospitals. Spectrum Health last week received approval for 250 temporary beds at Grand Valley State University at their Cook DeVos Center. Mercy Health St. Mary's in Grand Rapids has proposed adding 200 beds Mercy Health here in Muskegon secured approval last week to add 72 beds at the hospital campus on Sherman. So in addition to adding beds at hospitals, they're looking at working with other organizations to try to figure out how to care for these people, which is why it's so important for us to try to maintain our participants where they are. There's just going to be a huge demand on our hospitals, and so I just encourage you to do everything possible to keep yourself and your family members safe so that they don't have to go to the hospital, as well as our participants. Federally, CMS has issued a formal notice entitled Reprioritization of Audit Activities. Essentially, they're putting most audit activities on hold. They're suspending things that aren't related to the COVID-19 crisis. They're prioritizing infection control audits, primarily in areas, in facilities that have had a spike in COVID-19 cases or infection control issues. Our Part D financial audit that we began several months ago has been suspended until further notice. So they are relaxing audits, understandably. But remember, once this is past us, the auditors will be back around. And so we need to just be very mindful of how we're documenting and what we're documenting. I would just say always err on the side of caution, over document, make sure you're documenting reasons why you're not able to meet certain regulations. I think everyone's doing that. And if you have questions specifically, please talk to either Kelly or Heidi. But just know, when this is all over, the auditors will be back around and they'll be looking at things that we did during this crisis. And we don't know what lens they're going to use. I'd like to talk a little bit about the confirmed cases in Michigan. As of Wednesday, Michigan had 9,334 reported COVID-19 cases. This is an increase of 1,719 from the day before. There have also been 337 deaths in Michigan, which is up by 78 from the day before. I share these not to scare you, but just to make sure that you're informed. Remember that we've been told that the next 2 to 3 weeks will likely show a huge increase in the number of confirmed cases. So these escalating numbers are anticipated. And I don't want to evoke fear or worry, but I just want to keep everyone informed. So experts are telling us that 25% or more of people with the virus show no symptoms. That's why social distancing must continue. As the weather gets warmer and we get spring fever, it's going to be more challenging to continue practicing social distancing. But please continue to strictly abide by the guidelines. I want you to remember that the majority of people who become infected do indeed recover and survive. It's the people like our participants who are most at risk of severe symptoms or death. I wish I had a firm deadline, but I have no idea of when this new normal will be behind us. We will continue to battle this together, one day at a time, and I remain convinced that I wouldn't want to be involved in any other organization during this time because you are an incredible team, and I feel much more secure because of that. You know, hindsight is 20/20. There are so many examples in my life of things that have been really challenging, really difficult, really painful, that after they've passed and you've had time to reflect, you've had time to gain perspective. It might be weeks, it might be months, it might even be years. But most of the time, you look back on a hardship and you realize, wow, this is what I learned. This is how I grew. This is a relationship that was improved. This is an epiphany. Without those hardships and challenges, I wouldn't know this or this or this. So I guess I'm trying to challenge us all to think about what we're going through um, as building blocks, as ways that we're improving, growing, becoming stronger. And maybe months or years from now, we'll be able to look back and realize everything that this experience has helped us to improve. And I'm not suggesting that this is good that this has happened, but it's happening. And like any hardship that we've been through, it leads to growth, it leads to reflection, and it leads to an improvement. So try to think of it that way and have a wonderful weekend. And thank you again for everything you're doing to improve the lives of our community members.